Hello, I'm Scott Montgomery, and I'm creating a series of videos called from a page I'm starting called the Small Town Mercer. And in this page, I'm going to be doing historical as well as topical news of the day. Um, Hopefully, I'm going to get to about 7 or 8 or so per month, and we'll see from there. So, anyway, I still have some ties to Washington, not many. I'm more or less retired now. However, I'm going to start by making my this first video on what I was able to ascertain from what was going on in Washington 2 days ago. Um, and I got to say, we're in a transition period, and it's going to be a major one, and it's going to take a long time for everything to settle. So, just as the news of what happened 2 days ago. Today's January 8th, by the way. It's 2021. And I had to comb through, I don't know, over 100 videos and try to piece together what I think happened down there. I'm not getting a lot of news or a lot of full reports, and I really don't think people know, the full extent of the story because it's not being reported. It's being propagandized. Everybody comes to a judgment, and then they want to talk about what should be done. First of all, no news agency that I've seen or heard from as of yet has told anyone the whole picture. I'm going to attempt to tell the whole picture by piecing together all the bits of information I've been looking at for the past day and a half. But even some of what I'm going to say is going to be basically speculation. And so I came down here and used my mainframe computer. This is really not my office anymore. I still use it as such, but not much. So I had to piece together my notes, and I'm going to be looking down because I don't have any of my prompts up here anymore. So I'm just going to start in. First of all, my summary of what happened at the Capitol. Now, I've seen it spun 3 different ways so far. Number one, I'm seeing a lot of reports. Most of the reports you see on television are saying that, this is a Trump inspired riot, that his followers followed his lead and went down there to try to attack and threaten and get the election results his way. You're seeing a lot of that being talked about today, and then now they've moved on from that because they've all assumed that everybody believes that, and now they're talking about some kind of an impeachment or some other issues to nullify anything that Trump can do in the next 15 days or 10 days or however many, 12 days I think is how many days he has left. So, which is kind of silly. Then you have the ceremonial outrage of people resigning from his cabinet, so forth and so on. I'm not going to get into that. I don't think a lot of people believe that. That are people who would normally be of the philosophical, would agree with the philosophical philosophy, I should say, of conservatism and so forth. I think if you're on the left side, you probably do believe that, and even if you don't believe that, you want to believe that. So that's one case. The second case, and I've seen this a lot on the right-wing media, is Trump is not to blame. Right-wingers, a small amount of crazy right-wingers were at fault, and that has no way has anything to do with the president. And, it was a black eye on the conservative movement type thing. All right? Then you have I would say the hardcore Trump people. And they're going to tell you, and this is pretty unanimous, that it was a false flag operation. Antifa, BLM, were there. And they incited it, and that's how it started, and it became a melee after that. Okay, so those are the three schools of thought on this incident. So I'm going to go over, I pieced together all the information I could. Those are the three consensus viewpoints. There's a few viewpoints that are kind of in between those. And so I've looked at them, and I'm actually going to process all, I already processed all this. And I'm going to try to explain as best I can what I think happened. So what do we actually know? All right. Let me start with Donald Trump and his organization are fighting these election results. That's known. We've had legal challenges that have not been taken up, or mostly have not even been looked at. People in some of these states, and even people at Congress, the Supreme Court, have not really looked at it. They basically disregarded it and sent it back down, and for the states to ratify. The states sent 2 sets of electors, some of the contentious states, and those were the objections that you were hearing on Wednesday, or were attempted to be heard on Wednesday, as we got to the challenges to certifying the election, which makes it official who the president-elect is at that point, once the Congress does that. House and Senate both have to take it up. You have to have objections from both. Well, it never really got to that process because it was kind of interrupted by this crowd going to the Capitol. So what do we know? Well, we know that Trump planned his rally. He was going to deliver the speech, and he was going to have people march up to the Capitol. And they were going to make their point heard at the Capitol. And I got to say that this is nothing new. This happens a lot. Generally, it happens when it really makes news. It doesn't really make news a lot unless there's high stakes involved, unless it's a highly anticipated law that's being passed. And I have some examples that I wrote down. So, for instance, in 2010, we had this same fervor going on in Capitol Hill just before the House was going to pass the Obamacare, the Affordable Health Care Act law. Okay, I was down there for that. I witnessed that. I witnessed most of the congressional people, sometimes 30, 40, 50 people in their office, complaining about it or advocating for it, so forth and so on. But you had thousands and thousands, maybe even 100,000 people down there, maybe more. Now, the day I was there, I was there like the second or third day. I wasn't there on the first day. They were debating this over a series of days. President Obama had a meeting with House people, and then the House people were taking it up. The Senate was taking it up, so forth and so on. So I was there for all that. I was there in the Capitol building where there were people in there, and in the congressional offices, in the Capitol building, as well as going to the congressional and Senate offices. So they were all over the place. And it was that way for a few days. And then they voted on the act. Okay? So then you had the Kavanaugh hearings in 2017, in which case most of the protesters, they didn't really go to the Capitol, although some did. They more or less camped out in front of the Senate offices. All right? So that's that. I do remember an instance where a lot of people did rush into the Capitol building. They were stopped, but this was during the 2007 Iraq War protest because this had been going on for a few years now, and didn't look like anybody was coming home or any resolution was happening, so they had a big protest down there. I don't know if that made a lot of national news or not, but I do remember being there for that, and I do remember thousands of people in the building, and many of them were escorted out by police. So it was another zoo-like atmosphere. I don't know if it was anything like yesterday. But I do know also in 2014, 2015, this was an incident that you would typically see now and again. In this particular instance, I remember leaving the Capitol building and walking down the steps because I had a meeting there. And I noticed there was a huge crowd of people, but they weren't in the building, they were just outside the building. And it turned out to be that was some kind of a Glenn Beck rally. So I didn't really question them because I had to go to another meeting in the Hart building, the Senate building. So, but I did notice they were there. I assume that that's what the Trump people were going to do, was to be outside of the building and make their voices heard there. I do remember during the Tea Party rallies, they did that a lot back in 2010, 2011. A lot of Tea Party rallies, there were thousands and thousands of people surrounding the Capitol. They were on the lawn, they were on the front side, the east side, the south lawn, all those areas. They surrounded the Capitol. The March for Life coming up later in January, you're going to have 500,000 people. They're going to walk in front of the Supreme Court. But they are going to walk by the Capitol, and sometimes they enter the Capitol. So it's not unusual for this to happen. What is unusual is that people usually don't enter the building while both houses are in session. That's the unusual part. And so that had to have been done in some way or another. That would not have been hundreds of thousands of people rushing into the building, because that's not what happened. What I did see that happened, I have seen instances of Antifa and BLM members posing as Trump members. We have verifications of that, of them entering into the Capitol. However, I don't see them actually breaking anything. I see them being let in, like it was some sort of a false flag thing. I don't have any proof that it was, but it looks that way because I'm looking at the timestamp and I'm looking and noticing that it was before 2:30 that they were let in. And they were dressed as Trump supporters, but they've been identified, many of them, the ones that I'm talking about, as Antifa and a couple of Black Lives Matter identifications. But again, you have people that belong to both groups, so they could be all Antifa and some crossover there. Okay. Now, supposedly, the person who shows up a lot in pictures is the guy with the horns on his head, And supposedly, I'm getting reports now that he's some sort of an FBI insider, and that he was spying on Antifa and BLM to see what they're up to, because the FBI is considering them a terrorist type organization and wondering what they were doing there. Well, I think a lot of people have made the assumption that they were there to instigate something and kind of lead Trump followers into the office building and follow them in there. And I don't know, but I do see some videos on that. However, I also see videos of other people that were not them, that were breaking windows and entering into the doors. So I don't know how that started, but that's in a different part of the building, a different part of the Capitol. So you've got that going on. And then you have people walking up the steps on the front end of the building, across from the Supreme Court. And they're just walking in. They're not rioting or protesting or anything. They're just walking in. I don't know who or how, there weren't any officials with them. Trump wasn't there. So I don't know why they were entering. I guess, normally you can just enter. I don't know that a whole crowd of people can now. I've entered that way before, but you don't see large crowds entering there. So I don't know what the rules are on that. But they were not rioting. They were just entering. I do know that there have been, I did see the video of the shooting. I don't have any commentary on that. I don't know why people were trying to crawl through doors. I don't understand that, unless the police were crowding them and trying to get them out of there. It looked like there were police pushing them in that direction, and it's possible that they couldn't get out and they attempted to go through the door. That might be the best example I can think of. And as soon as somebody tried to get through the door, some other person came from behind a hallway and shot her. So I don't understand why the police were pushing those people in that direction. And I don't understand why somebody was waiting there to shoot them. That seemed very odd. It was only one shot fired and the person left. So that was very strange. I do also know that the police were forcing people into corridors. And again, I don't know how they got in there. They were either let in or they let themselves in. And I do know that somebody in that whole situation, there was one person who was suffocated in the crowd because they were pushed into a corridor and trampled on. That same incident, while that person was being trampled and killed, people started pushing back because they thought they were going to suffocate and something like that, or be injured or be cornered or something. I don't know. And they pushed back and fought back against the police. And some policeman was seriously injured and eventually died. So how you piece that together, I don't think you can. I don't think you can say, well, this was orchestrated. Some of it might have been, absolutely. Some of it, most of it probably was not. Most of it was probably people being lured there. And as a result of that, they acted inappropriately. And I'm sorry, but those people that were Trump supporters that either followed the lead of these Antifa people or just acted on their own, it doesn't matter whether you followed their lead or not. You are responsible for your own actions. And you are liable for whatever wrong you did there. And yes, I'm sure Antifa, and I'm sure there was some sort of a false flag there. And they definitely were there. They definitely were trying to cause something like that to happen. However, you have a responsibility as a patriotic American to act like a responsible adult. I get it, and I hear this on right-wing media all day long and all day yesterday. I get it that leftists don't act that way. They destroy things and tear up things, and the media excuses it and covers it up for them. But we as responsible patriots cannot act that way. All right, so therefore there's no excuse for the non-Antifa people who did bad things. No excuse. Even if they did it. You did it. You did it too. And there's several people up there that are not Antifa people that are on that FBI hit list. Now, yes, I think there was a false flag, and yes, they do bear responsibility. But I'm sorry. Here's what I believe. And here's what I think most reasonable people believe. Number one, trying to blame Donald Trump for this is pure political nonsense. It's just a hit job. You want to pretend that he did something bad so that you can arrest him and impeach him or something, and have an impeachment and an indictment added to the impeachment so that he can't run again in 2024. And so that, you want to damage the Republican Party so that the Democratic Party can take over and run the country into the ground, basically, with crazy agenda items. So that, I reject that altogether. Number two, for the right-wing people, running scenario after scenario of how bad Black Lives Matter, Antifa, or other crazy organizations act, no way justifies any violent activity on the Capitol grounds. Does not. They should have been there. They should have had an organized protest. They should have gone to the congressional offices, talking to the staff and the aides in the congressional office, voiced their disapproval that way, like was done during the Obamacare hearings, not threatening or running in the buildings or trying to get into the Senate and House chambers. I don't know the only pictures I've really seen for the most part of people entering into the chambers have been in the Antifa people. So I don't know if patriots tried to enter that or not. I do know that some of the offices there of the staff, like Pelosi or some other people, have had items stolen. I doubt Antifa did that. And if news organizations did that, then shame on them. But I'm hearing a report they're trying to go after one of Glenn Beck's reporters. But Glenn Beck's reporter did nothing wrong. So drop that nonsense. And that's the other thing. So here's the situation in a nutshell. Here's what I've taken away from this. Here's something we can all agree on. Number one, political parties are a disaster for this country. I think it's time to get out of them. I really do. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But there's little trust in Republicans or Democrats. I mean, this is the real culprit responsible for this, political parties. Political parties have screwed the country over to enrich themselves. They have sold this country out. That's the real reason they hated Donald Trump. He was not a member of either of these parties. He's actually been a member of both parties in his life, as well as the Reform Party, which is an offshoot party. Okay? So that's one thing. Political parties, I'm sorry, we're going to have to do something else, and I'm going to get to that in a couple minutes here. The second thing I blame is the media. The media never tells the truth about anything, and very few of them do. Very few of them do. 98% of media that I've looked at gives you one truth and 50 lies. So yeah, you've got one truth in there, and then 50 lies, and then you get another truth, and then 25 lies, and then another truth, followed by 10 or 15 lies, and then we put it all together, and it's, you can put so much sugar in a vat of crap, and if it's 98% crap, it's not edible. So, and then they run with it. Then they say, wow, this happened. Trump incited these riots. He must be impeached. Or the left wing incited the riots. Now the right wing did something, and now they're all mad. What hypocrites they are. These are not the arguments I want to hear. The arguments I want to hear are responsibility, the trashing of property for the last year, the disrespect we have for government and officials. Unless we're in power, then you better follow us or we'll kill you. Okay? So going from, we're a bunch of hippies and we hate the government, and then all of a sudden you get in power, and now you follow us or we'll round you up. So basically you go from hippy-dippy-doo to Hitler from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Okay? Nobody has any confidence or trust in people who act like that. And essentially, that's the Democratic Party. And then the Republican Party makes excuses for peace and kumbaya and how to get along with them. This political party situation, oh, we're just disagreeing, This political party situation is over with. People need to leave them. And the media, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to do something different. This is what I do, and this is how I'm going to end this video. Number one, I pay attention to all medias online, all medias I can, whether it's self-reporting, video, the little reporting outfits like Right Wing Media and what have you. All the blogs from Huffington Post, Daily Beast, some of the ones I don't agree with, or some of the ones I do agree with, like People's Pundit or Dan Bongino or people like that. All the podcasts. So get as many of them as you can. And invest in time. You can't do all this in one day. You have to take time. You have to devote an hour a day or something to different ones and digest all the things they're talking about. So that's the first thing you have to do. Stop watching TV media. It's basically TV wrestling. The wrestler, I'm going to kick that guy's rear end. He's an evil SOB. And then the other guy comes on. No, that guy's the evil SOB. Blah, blah, blah. So if you're CNN, Fox News, all that stuff, that's what they're all about. They're TV wrestling. Hucksters is what they are. So stop listening to that. If there's a one or two good shows on those networks where people are acting sane and giving information, then watch them. But for the most part, I don't see that on those networks. I see a lot of propaganda and talking over people. Number two, political parties. It's time that we start a Patriot Party. And a Patriot Party has to be something that strictly follows the Constitution. Strictly follows the Constitution. The old Federalist, Democratic, Republican argument of loose interpretation, strict interpretation, Supreme Court judges the law, whatever they say goes. No. You have to make legitimate laws. They have to start locally. The Patriot Party, all these movements have to be local party movements. Local, you address your local issues. Taxation, you have to, as a community, have self-sustaining living standards. You can't have the state or the federal government front you money because you can't afford to do whatever it is you need to do for your community, make the roads better or make everything. You, as citizens of that community, need to do that. You don't need to have homeless camps all over the place and give them money. You need to provide jobs for people, and the private people need to beautify their area, and their employees need to beautify their properties. They should be owning their properties, not living on government subsidies or having government housing or having a bunch of buildings that are owned by a handful of people, most of which are your politicians or their relatives, by the way. Okay? That's got to stop. Number three, if you have any land at all, you need to grow a garden, you need to have chickens, you need to raise your own food. I'm sorry, but if you don't get exercise and you don't eat right and you don't live right, you're going to die and you're going to be at the mercy of the state. You don't want to be at the mercy of the state. All right. Number three, stop living on credit. I mean, obviously, big items that you need to buy a house or something, fine. But stop living on credit. You don't need a credit card to buy a new phone, a new car, or a new appliance every 2 years, or a car every 3 years. Take care of what you have, pay it off, and keep it. Even your cell phone. Stop trading in it every 2 years. I know they doctor it up so that it doesn't work right after 2 years. Tough. You don't need to be using it all day and all night. And that gets to my next point. And this is the most important point. Get to know your neighbors. Get to know them. And finally, personally for yourself, start going to church. Start listening to God. Stop pretending that you're bigger than God. It's not true. Finally, our educational system has to stop. Has to stop teaching nonsensical stuff. You teach factual history. If you taught, I'm sorry that factual history is hard. I'm sorry that you can't, let's say, for example, boil down the Civil War to say that, oh, it was all about people wanting slaves and people not wanting slaves. That was one of about 20 issues. It happened to be the hot topic at the time the war started. That's why it sold that way. But if you want to, that would be like saying today we're all fighting about Trump being president. We don't follow Trump because we worship the man, he's our God, or the people who follow him. I don't follow him. I like his policies. His policies I agree with. His policies of bringing our jobs to this country and not having third world countries make all our stuff so that we have jobs. I don't like the policies of people being a millionaire or a cocktail waitress. Those are the only jobs we have. That leads to wage disparities. You need to have good paying jobs. Good paying jobs make products that people want. Cars, appliances, housings, etc., etc. Okay? That's what you need to have. Those policies are what we fight for. We're not fighting, this just happens to be the latest thing, and people think that the fight is all about that. It's not all about that. That's just the latest issue. Okay? Similarly, so you got to teach that America is the way to fix your problems. God is the real way to fix your problems. All right? That's the real way. You have to make yourself into that type of person so that you use the American system, which is the fairest system ever created, anywhere ever, to address your grievances. And political parties, loyalty to political parties has to stop immediately. All right? That's why we should come up with a Patriot Party and just stay there. Stop the globalism, stop the credit, have our money trade as some kind of a gold standard, and make sure that other countries do the same thing. Then you can have real free trade and not have tariffs. All right? If all currencies are somewhat equal to one another, then you can do that. But if you have countries that make all the products and their currency is worth 1/20th or 1/50th or 1/100th of the consumer country, that's not going to work out. That consumer country is going to go bankrupt, and the other country is going to have the top currency, and our currency is going to be worthless. You can't have that. That's how a banana republic goes. And that's when you print money and give it to the people and require no work. That's what happens to your economy. Your money is worth less than a banana peel. All right? That's what's going to happen. So that needs to stop. I am going to be putting out more videos in the future. I went a little bit more over half an hour. I didn't want to go more than half an hour. But I am going to put videos out explaining exactly what I mean by political parties, by several of the other things I mentioned here, how a Patriot Party would work, how a sound financial system would work, how responsible people would work, okay, and work together, how we should get together. Our politics should be local. Everybody in town should know each other. Get off your cell phone and stop having virtual friendships. Have real face-to-face ones. And then talk about what do we want this community to look like. And when we make a decision, we pay for it, not the federal government, not the state government. We pay for it. We don't need their money. For major things you do, for your community things you do not. All right? Unless you put a university there or something. But otherwise, you pay for it. And you can pay for it because you'll have a factory in your town. That's how it should be, or some sort of business that makes a product, or some sort of agricultural entity. We should be making clothes in this country. We should be making products in this country. Shouldn't be making them in third world countries. Okay. We need the jobs here. And every country should have some of that. All right, I've gone a little long. I'm going to cut this video off, and I will be sharing more with you in the future. Thank you for listening.